It is such an honor to be here today. As Lana mentioned, my name is Jennifer Braun. I have the pleasure of being the Vice President of Operations at Trinity Logistics, Kansas City office. And I'm quite honored to be here today with some of my colleagues in the industry. We're here today with Sarah Ruffcorn. Sarah is the President of Trinity Logistics. And we're also here today speaking with Ann Ranke. She is the President of the Transportation Intermediary Association. So welcome, ladies, and welcome to everybody that's watching and that will be watching later. So today we are here, as Lana mentioned, to talk about women in leadership and women in transportation. We're specifically going to talk about a recent Harvard Business Review analysis of women in 2020. How women were rated by their peers as more effective than men in leadership. The results from the pandemic showed a wider gap than in years prior, suggesting that women lead better in times of crisis. We're also going to see a video later from Ava Pearson, and Ava is a recognized female driver and has won awards and has a lot to say on this topic. So again, thank you for everyone for joining today. We're going to kick it off talking about this past year. Sarah, Ann, what are two of the top words you would use to describe this last year leading during a pandemic?
Sarah, I'm going to defer to you since you're more senior in the industry than I.
Oh gosh, I don't hear that very often. Yeah, so I can sure kick it off. I think, as we look back over the last year and a half, it's taken a tremendous amount of leadership from a lot of people to get through all the ups and downs and unexpected twists and turns that I think we all encountered over the last year. But when I was thinking around, over the last year, between all those things that were kind of thrown at us, one thing that I think really sticks out to me is authenticity. And, when we think back over those days where we were just like, we don't know what is going on. I mean, I don't know that I've ever had a time where I have said, wow, you know what? I don't think anybody knows what's going on, and we're not alone in that. And just being very authentic to say, here's what we know, and here's what we don't know yet. And we're working on it. And here's my life as it is on video chat and conference calls and, all those things. And I think all of those things kind of coming together, I think of just us all as leaders having to be just very authentic through those times. Everybody I felt like really had to let their guard down and say more than I've ever heard before. I'm just not sure what's going to happen next, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or when we're going to be able to come back to the office, or when, these things are going to happen. And everybody was searching for answers so many times. So I think of that. And then I also think about just the need for clarity at the same time. So authenticity and clarity, and just the effort that we had to put into clarifying expectations, or clarifying, what we were able to do or not to do, through all of that, and just having an extreme amount of clarity in our communication and communicate often, through all of that. So those would be my two words.
Yeah, those are great words. I think we all can relate to everything you just mentioned. Ann, was there anything that, in listening to what Sarah spoke of, was there anything that rang true for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I don't think anyone was winning the pandemic. We're all in it together. And so there's a little bit of solace in that. Like, you don't feel like, well, why are, our neighbors down the street doing so great? No one's doing great. We're all in this together. And there is a little bit of comfort in that. When I think of, though, when I was thinking about this question, to me, it was plan B, meaning plan A is not going to work. So last year was plan B, whether it's, your kids going to school or not going to school, whether it's you going on a spring break or not going on a spring break, like what can we do instead?
Yeah.
And the same thing with your, I was with DOT for most of last year. And so it was all about plan B. Is like, we're going to stay at home, then we're going to go to work, and then we're going to, and it was like figuring out how do we make this work? What can we do to get people working that makes sense? And here at TIA, it was pivoting to, all right, make our VPN really strong so we can all work from home and so that we can still be seamless and serving our members. So to me, it's all about, well, and I hate saying pivot because everyone says the word pivot. So I said plan B instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And your mention of the word plan B kind of falls in line with, I guess I was going to cheat and use the word preparation, because preparation obviously is a very broad term and it encompasses so much with having a plan B. And, both as a professional and for a company to have the plan Bs, to have the infrastructure, to have the technology, to have trained your people to know how to offer solutions to their internal customers, their external customers, and to feel like you got some planning to fall back on, some preparation, so that you can still move forward. As you mentioned, no one was winning the pandemic, but it was good to know that there were some next steps that you could take so that you could still achieve the priorities of servicing customers and communicating with your teammates and your families. And yeah, so that's really good. Thank you for that. One of our next questions is, what were some of the key issues that you both saw?
So, when I think all of us in our different roles saw probably a lot of different things through this last year, but Jennifer, I would actually love to hear your thoughts on this first.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny, because one of the things that I felt myself saying over and over again, to Ann's point, I felt like I've used the word pivot a lot. I've also used the word, it's a fluid situation. It's like everything's changing all at one time. So much uncertainty, so many rapidly changing situations, rapidly evolving situations, so much volatility and increases in one thing and decreases in another. And there were so many issues I saw along those lines with both the internal team that I work with and external customers and trucking companies that we work with. Everybody was having so much uncertainty. Sales are up, sales are down. To Ann's point, people are working remote. Some are thriving in that environment or having the pieces in place, and others aren't. Some people, you may have tried to get a hold of people on the phone and their phones weren't rolling over, so you're relying more on email. So last year, I felt like there were some times where people may have been in disbelief and in shock, and you had to talk through some situations and just kind of monitor and try to stay close to people, be connected, and kind of monitor their resilience and help them feel confident in their role in servicing their customers, and making sure that they felt like they had the resources and the support to do their jobs. From a customer and carrier standpoint, there was a lot of uncertainty and fear, and a lot of opportunities for Trinity to try to be a voice of calm and reassurance and solutions that we're here for you. Whenever that is, if you're super busy this week and on furlough next week, we're still here for you, and we're going to be here for you. And Trinity's a solid company, and I'm so proud of the technology infrastructure and our teammates for being able to transition to a remote work environment so well, and to be able to support our teammates and just really take more advantage of the video chat and other tools to stay connected. So yeah, that uncertainty and working through all that uncertainty are some of the things that I really saw last year.
Mhm. I think as I looked across like our supply chain networks and things, some of the key issues where you saw complete supply chains collapse,
Yes.
in the realm of some of those products, the food products and food industry, which we're heavily involved in, and just seeing those issues of total collapse and backup and manufacturers not being able to, get the products at all. And just the issues that created for our shippers, but also for our carriers. I mean, we had states where they completely shut down all the truck stops,
Right.
and hearing the stories of those issues just across that supply chain network was just astonishing, and every day I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And how are we going to work through now this new challenge? To make sure that we're doing everything you can, to your point, Jennifer, to service, those carriers the best we could. And, there
Right.
were some things that we did and helped them, do through those times, as a carrier. And I just, I'm just so thankful as we look back for the strong carrier relationships and the carriers and the drivers who really held strong and like we're on a mission this last year. Like we are on a mission. We have a whole new bigger calling, to make sure that the PPE is getting to where it needs to be, or that the, food is getting to where it needs to be, because people need it more now than ever before. And I feel like it raised such huge awareness to the importance of their role and to the importance of supply chain in general, where many times it just flies under the radar and it's just everything just shows up in the store seamlessly. And we just never think about how things get there, but I think there was this huge spotlight specifically, on our drivers and on our carriers that just really elevated the importance of their role and who they are and what they do for all of us every single day. And so I think that's a cool thing kind of coming out of this year. And I hope that carries forward, in the public in general, of just the importance of our drivers and our carriers. So
yeah, amen. That's a good point.
I was going to say, Sarah, too, the unintended consequences of those initial state shutdowns, like shutting down the rest stops, meaning, okay, well, do you want to grind interstate commerce to a halt? Because that's what's happened. I was a DOT at the time. And so we had to go and talk to these governors' offices and say, you're not really understanding what you're doing. But the fact that the industry itself had to prevail and say, we are essential workers. Who can we talk to over at the Department of Homeland Security, who is handling all of that, to say, we are essential workers. You need to let us work. You need to let us have the ability to go and sleep in rest stops or what have you, park. And it's unfortunate in a sense that a worldwide pandemic made it clear how critical the role of our industry is in the supply chain. But hey, once we've learned that, I think it's not going to be a lesson lost, right? So
right. Good points. Looking at the overall, can you share what takes initiative means to you? That's a big topic, isn't it? That could take a lot of different. Very broad.
What does it mean to you, Jennifer?
Wow. Well, I have a thing of, I'm looking at situations, and a lot of times it's like you're looking at where it's at currently and you're thinking, what could make it better? Like, is this the best that we can do? Is this achieving the mission? Is this going to get us to the end goal? And if it's not, then what needs to happen? What needs to happen to impact the absolute best case scenario? And who's the person to do that? And that takes different forms, honestly, because takes initiative can also, I don't know, it can ride in alignment a little bit with empowering others. Like, you don't want to take initiative and take on too much to where you're not collaborating enough. So I think take initiative can really be raising an awareness, asking questions, challenging yourself and other people to give feedback, to brainstorm, to have ideas on ways that a certain thing or service or whatever can be better, and to really do what you can to raise that awareness and get that momentum going and involve other people along the way. So that may have been a roundabout answer, but that's what take initiative means to me. What about you, Anne?
Well, I think, there's some people in life, and I think I'm one of these people, but I definitely know people like this who, if they see an issue, immediately they're on it, right? It could be just litter on the street, or it could be a line at a restaurant that you don't really know why there's a line, you're trying to figure out. It could be any of that, or it could be seeing a problem and saying, all right, what can we do to fix it? And it's just not, it's that instant, like, well, I got to address it, right? To me, that's taking initiative where you feel like you have a responsibility, an immediate responsibility. And sometimes you get the responsibility because of the title you have, and sometimes you have the responsibility because that's the kind of person that you are. I think people who have that kind of initiative end up getting the titles where they are the ones responsible to take initiative because they have been their whole life. Yeah. And it's just sort of a natural consequence of, I'm seeing something right now in front of me that clearly needs addressing. Is anyone going to address it? Because otherwise I will, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed. And that's why I mentioned sometimes I have to make sure that I'm not, you don't want to run too far ahead to where other people that maybe were going to do something that you don't want to take too much of a top role that you don't give other people a chance to develop. So sometimes, yeah, I agree with you, and I have to try to throttle myself back to make sure that I do want to collaborate and empower other people. And
that's a great point. That is a great point, because what led you to where you are today was probably because you took initiative on yourself. But what gets you to be a great leader is by empowering other people to take it on. Right?
So the two can be in alignment, but they can also be a little bit apart. So you have to, I guess be aware.
Initiative to delegate now, right?
Right.
Very good. Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Everything I said, just listen to Sarah.
In leadership, it's not necessarily about taking it on yourself all the time, right? Because you can identify a lot of problems or gaps or holes or ways to be better, to your point, but not all the time are we the best ones to solve for those things. And so sometimes taking the initiative looks like, to your point, Jennifer, involving somebody else who knows more than you do about it. And maybe giving them a little push or encouragement or shove to say, hey, help me solve for this, and sometimes it means us stepping out of our comfort zone when we don't know the answers, and just saying, hey, we know we need to solve this. Let's get the smartest people in the room to do that. So, yeah,
good point. Good points. So, how would you say that you've been working to incorporate inspiring others and developing others into your roles?
Do you want to start, Anne, on this one?
Sure. This is also a big topic. And so Sarah, to me, is someone that I need to embody and honor and respect, because this is part of Trinity's core culture and part of her strength as a leader. But it's about empowering the team so that they feel a shared, sense of responsibility, a shared sense of mission. And so when you do that, well, first of all, you can do it through listening to them, bringing transparency into processes, emphasizing their critical role, and being not a thoughtless cheerleader, but a mindful cheerleader, that we need to understand and appreciate your strengths. We're in it together. We have to collaborate together. And I've been very struck by this book. I think I mentioned this to you, Sarah. Simon Sinek wrote this book, Leaders Eat Last.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really, the focus is you're working for your team now. You've got to focus on making them their best selves. And how do you do that? And really, it's a circle of trust, knowing they can trust you and you trust them and you trust them to do their best.
Yeah, I think this links up so much to our culture at Trinity. It does. The servant leadership model, where you're really truly working to remove obstacles for other people, help them get to where they want to go. And, how many conversations, we have around, what role do you want to be in 3 years? Where's your career? Where do you feel like your career trajectory is? And what do you want to work on? And sometimes, they come up with all kinds of things for sure, but sometimes those conversations really lead into great ways of encouraging or offering them opportunities to get involved in different projects to really develop their skill set in the ways that they want to or need to develop. And so I know I've had some cheerleaders, in my career that have absolutely, helped me get on different committees or panels to increase my skill set in different ways. And I really want to be able to do that for others, and putting together, with our team development plans, with our leadership group, where do you feel like you need to improve, and what does that look like, and how can I help you get to your end goal? And setting, doing everything you can in your power to help, involve and encourage and motivate in those ways, where they see themselves, I think is a huge part of this, and servant leadership and just removing those obstacles for them in general. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was such a great way of saying it. And when you mentioned being a mindful cheerleader, part of what Sarah just mentioned also about the servant leadership is to, when we're providing feedback, to make sure it's real specific, so it's not nearly as impactful to give feedback or to give compliments that aren't specific. What specifically are you wishing to have this person know about their performance or their leadership, or, to Sarah's point, where they want to go in the future. So to really be I guess mindful of the words that you're using, and what traits you're commenting on, and what growth you're really trying to drive and challenge in that person. And a lot of that is really based on that connection that you have of how well do you know the person that you're trying to lead. Hopefully about their hopes and desires, so that you can have those great conversations like what you just mentioned, Sarah. Where do you want to be in a few months or years from now? So yeah, those are really great points. Miss Ann, you are fairly new to your role there at the Transportation Intermediary Association. What have been some of the key initiatives in your role there?
Well, so I'm sort of going to not repeat myself. I'm going to try not to repeat myself, but part of it really has been to empower the team. And this is a team that has so much more industry knowledge, membership knowledge than I. And so I really need them almost more than they need me. I really need them because they know so much, and they know where the pitfalls are, and they know what we've tried, and they know what we haven't tried. And so I've really tried to empower them. And part of that is just providing, as I mentioned, transparency into some processes. So for example, the team had never been part of our budget process, our annual budget process. And so I brought them in because I thought, for goodness sake, they know better than I what their department needs and what their department's going to spend and all of that. So surely they should be part of the process. And so those kinds of things where I'm really trying to get the group together to understand that my core values, I want to become our core values, which are transparency, humility, and integrity. And it's obviously challenging to do that over Zoom. We have some, in-person components, but it's really challenging to develop that. But that's been one of my key initiatives. And I think the other is we are really trying to amplify our advocacy. I think TIA has such an incredible base of memberships that have an economic multiplier effect for our nation's economy. And so we can be far more used as a resource on Capitol Hill. And, last year we had a very challenging issue that Sarah can tell us all about and probably doesn't want to, that we want to move beyond, and how do we do that? I think part of it is, and Sarah and I talked about this, is we really emphasize how that we provide the safety, the efficiency, and the ethical component for the supply chain. And so just that kind of thing, those are sort of the two leading things, and doing that during COVID when we can't have an in-person meeting yet, but we will. You should still register for our annual meeting, May 11th through 13th. It's going to be virtual, but then we're bringing it back in person later in the year. I had to get my plug in, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I'm writing that down, May 11th through 13th. All right. Fantastic. Yeah, and it's great. We appreciate you and your role there at the TIA, because it's, as you mentioned, this is, fantastic to have such a wonderful organization advocating for all of the third-party logistics companies out there to provide that ethical and safety component to our industry. So,
and I have to say, having been on the TIA board for a little while now, and I think you've done a tremendous job. I mean, your leadership truly in the last board meeting, and just how the team has really come together and rallied around you, and how you're leading that team forward, I think really does speak directly to what you're doing to empower them and make the overall team and our industry even better and stronger. So,
well, thank you. I mean, it's only been a few months, so
I know. That's incredible.
We gotta keep working.
That's right. It's been incredible.
all right, next up, we get to see a video, an interview with a driver. Our marketing director, Brittany Siegel, had a chance recently to speak with Ava Pearson. And Ava Pearson is a very, very wonderful driver, close to Trinity's heart. She's an awarded driver, and has some experiences that she would like to share with us of what it was like to be a female truck driver out on the road during the pandemic. So we're going to see a video with Brittany and Ava.
Hi, I'm going to take it over with the screen here. So if there's any issues with audio or video, please let me know in the chat. But I will switch over here and play it from a YouTube clip for you.
Okay.
So as an essential worker during this very difficult time in this past year, what was your experience like?
It was difficult in a way where we were not able to interact with other people. We had to keep our distance, and it was like we were shunned, as drivers were shunned off from other people almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a driver, I mean, do you really appreciate that connection piece of your profession?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It goes beyond work with a lot of the people that are on the other side of transportation, like with office workers or warehouse workers. It can go beyond just work.
Yeah. And as far as, obviously with the pandemic, there were safeguards in place. When you were visiting different facilities, were all of those health safeguards there and what you expected?
Yeah, they were. Everyone stepped up and did their part with sanitation and keeping your distance. Everybody was wearing their mask. So everybody did their part, which was a very good thing.
And as far as, things that changed, I mean, was access to facilities and things that were part of your normal, was that the same or different?
Some places were different. I didn't have really didn't have much problem with that being on the job, but away from the job, I've seen where a lot of places that I've visited where they shut their facilities down, out in the public area. So it was bad in that way.
Yeah. And if you had to think about, let's say, one or two words that, describe this year for you and, what you had to come out of this year, what would you say is those two words?
Discipline if you're not already used to doing something, when you learn to do it, you get more discipline in doing that, all for safety. And the other word I can use would be, I'm not trying to say isolated. That's the word I'm looking for. There's some isolation in there, but it was all for, for the better. And those, yeah, that's about the only two words I could think of.
Well, I like them though. Discipline though, that's really big. I mean, you mentioned, as an essential worker and as a driver, that nothing really could stop for you. I mean, in this last
Right.
year, you had to keep going. Can you just tell me what you kind of were faced with and what, when you found out all of that?
Well, we're faced with not coming in, not knowing how to handle the pandemic. First of all, you come in with, am I being safe, or how am I going to be protected? And it has you in a place where you just don't know, and you're like, well, why I have to be out here? I want to be at home safe with my family. Or if I have family at home, what if I take what's out here in this world back to my family? So it was kind of iffy there, not knowing the unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And going into the future, so now we're, coming up or already past the 1-year anniversary of when this all started. I mean, do you see a lot of this still carrying over into the next year, or are you seeing things improve?
I think things are improving. They will continue to improve. And it's great that everyone participated in doing the part of vigilant about being clean and wearing your mask and your gloves if you need be, and keeping your distance. So I think once everybody got it, although we lost a lot of people from this pandemic, it doing your part really helped out. And now that the vaccine is circulating around, it probably will help out even more to get us back to being normal.
Mm-hmm. Right. And one part, about women in leadership and working together. I mean, why do you think it's important that everyone from shipper, broker, driver communities all work together, to get through this?
As far as leadership,
Leadership, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think all of us could be leaders in all of this. Leading in the sense of doing what you're supposed to do, helping others do the same, so that we all can be safe. Well, I think everybody can be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any advice for other women, either in the profession or getting into the field?
Yeah, ask as many questions as you can. Do your research. Don't be afraid to ask, and help somebody else along the way. Once you get your foot in there and start doing things and getting along, help somebody else.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Everybody continue to be safe.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Ava. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great video. It's really exciting to see and to hear from Ava's perspective. So many, so many messages of empowerment and building up of other women. One of the things that really rang out to me was one of the last things that she said was, we are all leaders. Every one of us can be a leader, and there's so many ways that we can show that in our daily lives, and how important it is to ask questions, to learn more about your situation and how you can help other people, but then also to help other women, other people along the way. So that was real neat. Sarah, have you met Ava before? You have, right?
Yeah, I believe we met at actually Women for Trucking event.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I agree, Jennifer. I think that, being a leader, no matter where you are, oh my gosh, I could not agree more with that, and it's absolutely impossible to lead others if you're not leading yourself. But it's just so cool how she identified that as being such a key trait, and just couldn't agree more with her on that part. It was good to see how everyone can have that a level of responsibility to contribute to better the whole, and everybody has that a power, no matter what seat you sit in. You don't have to have a title for that.
Yeah, absolutely. What she
And
mentioned.
I just say, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, you first, Anne.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing she said, she asked lots of questions, which is, I think, so critical and an underused skill, right? Having a profound curiosity, I think, is enormously helpful, because the more you find out, the more you can make a better choice. If you just have it like a couple of inputs, it's never going to be the whole view. I think getting as much input as you can is helpful. Not to have paralysis by analysis. That's not what I'm suggesting, but at least having the curiosity to ask questions. I think it makes sense.
Exactly. One of the things that one of Trinity's mottos and our guiding values of excellence is challenging the status quo, and that really speaks to that asking and questions, and certainly coming out of a pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, because there's so many changes that have happened and will continue to happen. So some of the things that we did as leaders in the past and the way business was ran will likely look a lot different going forward. Another thing she mentioned that really rang true was the isolation and missing that connection piece. And that's one thing that I know probably everybody that will be watching this and is watching it live has dealt with the connection and isolation that was presented to everybody, and how we all are trying to work through it. To Anne's point, no one's winning the pandemic. So we've all had to show a lot of understanding and grace to those around us and to ourselves as we all work through this. So.
And it also goes, we talk about it all the time, but we're in the relationships business.
Yeah.
We're in a relationship driven business. We don't have necessarily a product. We are a service, but we all depend on relationships with our shippers, with our carriers, with the warehouse, with, it takes that, interaction and relationship to make things happen in the supply chain. And so, it was good to hear that from her, that she values that so much, because it really is what it takes to move it forward. So
yeah, universal concepts, right? I mean, she's the boots on the ground as we're out in the field driving and making the pickups and making the deliveries, and it's the same concept as what we may have in the roles that we have and in our office spaces. And Sarah, you teed us up perfectly. That is such a great segue into this next question about collaboration and teamwork. Why is it so important to work together? That's a perfect segue into what you were just mentioning about.
It just collapses if we're not. It just collapses. It just falls down, if we don't have that, whether it's between, teams, or whether it's between, us and our partners, or, the industry, and again, shippers and carriers, and all of that. But, if we're not all pulling in the same direction, it just all falls apart. So it's pretty important.
Yeah, and it's been really neat listening to Anne's story too, because it sounds like, Anne, you've got a lot of collaboration and teamwork going in your role there at the TIA, and how you're building so much credibility and trust with your teammate by allowing them to collaborate and give input on the future of TIA and on this year's initiatives and in the budgeting process. So have you gotten a lot of great feedback from your new team, and how they value all the collaboration and teamwork that you've been demonstrating to them?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for their growth. And so, they have stayed with TIA because they love it and they love the members, but you know, if you're in the same position for a number of years, you're thinking, what am I learning that's new? What am I trying, you know, where am I going with this? And so providing opportunities for them to learn and grow and change. And quite frankly, this is going to sound mercenary on my part, but I can't possibly know everything. So thank God. I mean, can you imagine the pressure if I did think I knew everything? That would be exhausting. So isn't it better for me, for the team, for everyone? It's a win-win that we really can work together and then give them assignments where they are clearly know more, or they have the relationships, or they've had the expertise, or they've had whatever it is. It works out to everyone's benefit, and it makes for a stronger organization.
That's a great point. And it hopefully takes, like you said, some pressure off of you, because nobody knows it all. I mean, we're all on a journey, and the world around us is always changing so rapidly. So yeah, we're always in a state of learning.
Yeah, I learned how to hashtag on Monday. I'm very proud of myself. I'm a Gen Xer. I don't know what hashtagging was, and I did it. So there you go.
All right, good deal. Another thing that ranked high on the Harvard Business analysis of female leadership was the high integrity and honesty. So why would you ladies say that's so important in what we do in the transportation industry? This almost speaks into what the legal or the regulation initiative that we were working through last year. High integrity and honesty, and why is that important?
Well, Sarah said it best, that this industry is based on relationships, and so you're only as good as your word. Yeah. You know, and if you want people to continue that relationship with you, you've got to stand by that word, and you've got to do what you say you're going to do and live by that. And if you don't, well, then you're not going to get returning customers. You're not going to get people who want to actually work with you. I worked at CSX. So first of all, let me just say I have a railroad background, and none of you hold it against me. So you're very welcoming and warm, and I appreciate it. But I worked for a woman who was our chief legal officer, and her moral compass is like nothing I've ever seen, because she realized that, you know, trains go through people's communities. And so you can disrupt by doing the wrong thing. You can disrupt their entire lives, right? And so that kind of power is something that you should never forget. And so the same with your business, with the association, we have, you know, members' money in our hands that we are supposed to use wisely and to their benefit, and think through that. And so we have to conduct ourselves with integrity. Otherwise, you know, what is the point, right? If we're not handling it ethically.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, at the foundation of every relationship is trust. And I think, you know, if you don't have, you know, the integrity and honesty to back that up, you know, trust goes out the window. So you've got to build everything on top of that. And yeah, I mean, again, just everything that we do is based off of our words. So little of it is honestly based off of contracts. You know, it's talking to drivers, it's talking to shippers, it's talking to people all day, every day. And it, you know, it all ends and starts with our word and backing it up.
And that's for everybody in every seat in the company too, right, Sarah? I mean, absolutely. Because all of the people that we have doing business at any minute of any day, whether it be phone call or email, if it's an account manager or a logistics specialist, to the recipient on the other end of the email chain or the phone, they are Trinity.
That's right.
They're Trinity. They're the face and voice of the company, and everything is visible and transparent everywhere, all the time. Every time you're talking with people, it's so important. And like you said, you mentioned moral compass, and it really just needs to be something that people live by each day, because it's just that important. So thank you for that. So we're just hitting the 1 year mark of the pandemic. It's a whole new world ahead of us. So what do you ladies see as some of the key opportunities into the future?
I feel like Sarah should start this one.
So I think that, as we look forward, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but I really see just the spotlight having been shown now on transportation and logistics in general. And so I see that as a huge opportunity as we move forward. We talk a lot in our industry around driver recruitment and the challenges of that. And right now, a lot of the driver schools are still not at capacity because, they have restrictions in place. And so there's such a high demand for a lot of freight being moved right now. The trailer orders have been at another high, the last few months. And so there's all this equipment that's needed out there. But I'm really hoping that there's some more opportunities. And, there's some new legislation that I know is just presented as well for drivers starting at 18. So we'll see where that ends up. And maybe, Ann, you can talk a little bit about that. But I just see that as being a big opportunity for, our country in general to be able to provide great paying jobs, to be able to provide better networks, more efficient networks, to be able to move freight around our country. But I see that as being such a huge opportunity for employment moving forward in our industry. So definitely excited about some of those trends, and hopefully people see that as a great career opportunity, into the future. I also see just the ability for us to be smarter and better at connecting those trucks and those drivers to the next load. As data continues to come to the surface, every single time I turn around, I feel like we're talking about more data and how to better connect, our supply chains and be more efficient and be more green. I see that as a very big opportunity for us moving forward to be able to better connect those shipments in more efficient and better ways to create a better experience, of course, for the carriers and the drivers, but also for our shippers to be able to be able to work with them to be able to parlay loads together and create more strings of loads together. So, and be more green at the same time. So I see those as kind of two kind of network and data opportunities, and also just the hiring and just the career path that I think this industry is and can continue to create in our space. So.
Yeah, good points.
Yeah, and I'd say too that I think Sarah's exactly right that in a sense, because of the pandemic, our role as a logistics industry has been understood a little bit better. And let's amplify that. Let's continue doing as much good as we can and sort of showcasing how critical we are. And so how are we critical? Well, we can be the sales force for the independent drivers, right? We can provide technological solutions that they simply can't afford, to Sarah's point. And we are doing that safely and efficiently, and because we have the relationships like we've talked about this whole time. So how can we magnify that and make sure that that's well understood? I think the logistics industry used to sort of fly under the radar, and now we really can't, nor should we. And I think that's an opportunity for us to showcase really what our strengths are. And I visited Trinity on Friday, and I visited Chop Tank Transport, and I visited H&M Bay, and I was so struck by those three companies together in the middle of very rural sort of, chicken processing plants and other ag, really not much industry around there, that the three companies together have an annual revenue of over $1 billion. So what does that mean to you? That the multiplier effect of providing jobs to others who would not have had an opportunity otherwise is tremendous. And that is replicated nationwide. So let's try to emphasize that.
I think that's a perfect, Anne, that you said that, because was it Winston Churchill that said, never let a good crisis go to waste?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think this is a great example of that, right? Like of the way that this pandemic has really highlighted the importance of what we do and allowed us a lot more opportunity to talk about it than I think we ever had before. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you come out of a crisis, and it just really kind of, I don't know, I think it is a great catalyst to reevaluate priorities. And there's so much that perhaps as an industry, as a country, as organization, as people, just everybody everywhere, and however they were impacted by this crisis, you reevaluate and what of the previous regime or system is worth keeping, and how much do we need to redo. I mean, it's kind of a blank new canvas, so there's a lot of exciting things going into the future. So great. What words of wisdom for other women in the transportation industry might you offer?
I would say, even when you don't feel prepared, say yes. Back to that whole taking initiative. I know sometimes, a lot of us like to hold back until we think we're ready for something, or find all the ways that we need to be better at something before we take something on. I guess my advice would be say yes, go for it, and use those subject matter experts around you to figure it out the rest.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer, I want to hear yours, but I think mine would be something similar, which is there are kinds of two kinds of parkers in the world. The people who park, they're like, I'm going to find a spot right up front. I'm going to go for it, go for the gold, right? And then there are people who are like, oh, this spot's convenient. It's right back here. I'll just park right here, right? It's like 3 miles away. I have decided in life, I am not going to be the latter kind of parker. I'm going to be the first kind of parker. I'm going to see what I can do, go for it. What do you have to lose? Somebody saying no to you, that's fine, right? We've had people had say no to you before, but don't hold your own self back, right? And if you let the other person say no to you instead of you saying no to yourself.
Yeah, I love them both. I guess my perspective would be similar to both of yours. I definitely agree, Sarah, with saying yes and not feeling like you have to be all prepared or have it all figured out before you take a leap of faith that you can do something. One of my favorite words is yet. I like to challenge people around me, people on my team, certainly my kids, if they try to say that they don't have something or they're not good at something, I always say yet. You can get better at anything you want to. It's just a matter of confidence and making it happen, of just trying. So, you can achieve pretty much anything you put your mind to it. So yeah, those are great points from both of you.
I like that. Yet.
Yes. Lana, how are we doing? Do we need to see if there's a few questions, or I've got a couple more questions keyed up, or is it about time to wrap it up?
Well, we've got a few minutes here, so we can open it up to Q&A. And if we don't have any questions coming in, then we can take one or two from your list, and then we can end right at the top of the hour. So with that, if anyone does have questions, use your chat box feature and type those away. Looks like a conversation bubble says chat underneath it in your Zoom portal. So just click on that and you'll see chat come up. You can type those up in there and we'll read off of there, and our panel will answer those questions for you.
By the way, I have to give a shout out to Sue Spiro. I saw her, she was on earlier, and she's on our board as well. We love Sue Spiro. So thank you for joining.
And we don't have any questions yet. So if you want to pull one from what you have, then we can address those in the last few minutes.
Certainly. So again, from this Harvard Business Review article that found that peers found women to be more effective as leaders during times of crisis, and specifically during the pandemic. One of the highly rated items was communicate powerfully and prolifically, which is quite the word. But I would imagine that all of us have had to really put to good use all of our communication skills during the pandemic. Sarah, you kind of hit on that early on in this interview event where you mentioned communicating often and with transparency. And can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so, we've always been, I've always found it to be very important to communicate a lot. But I think during this time, especially under times of uncertainty, it's like you really have to, you almost feel like you're over communicating.
Right.
And, we were talking about this the other day, and I don't know if there ever is a point of actual over communication. But I can measure it, because when we would push out videos at the beginning of the shutdown, we would get probably 3/4 of our population or more watching what's going on, what's happening, where are we at, how are we doing, what are we seeing in the market, all those kinds of things. And I was doing these weekly videos to the group. And so by the time I stopped doing them, probably about maybe 8 weeks ago, 6-8 weeks ago, there was maybe 20% of the people logging in and actually watching the weekly update video. And so I flipped it back to doing an email update. But I think during that time, and I got a lot of response from our team, especially again at the beginning, where it was just super uncertain, how thankful they were, how it made them feel so much better that they knew what was going on, and how it made them feel more connected, even though everybody was apart. And so I do think that there is something to that whole communicate often and communicate clearly, even when you don't know what, all the right answers. So.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to your authenticity.
Yeah.
It's okay, well, I don't have all the perfect things to
Don't
say,
have all the answers.
but I'm here and we're still in business and we still care about you guys and we're all in this together. So
yeah,
just that reassurance, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would just say people can't read your mind, not yet anyway. And so it's better to communicate and let them know what you're thinking. And even if you don't have the answers, it's okay to tell them that. I mean, I think that's part of it too. So when this is repeating what everyone has said, but err on the side of letting people know how things are going rather than keeping it to yourself.
Yeah, great points.
And we do have one comment here from Jordan, and Jordan just mentioned up in Canada, they had started a women in trucking program in the fall, and they just wrapped it up in February. And a few of their students are now pursuing jobs as professional drivers. And so kudos to women like you on this call who have helped pave the way for greater female representation in the industry. It's long overdue. So thank you, Jordan, for your comment. And thank you all on this panel. Thank you to Trinity Logistics and to TIA. We're so grateful that you were here to share this with all of us today and your expertise. So thank you all so much.